Hello, and thanks for tuning in to At the Table. Tonight, we have CJ and I. Hello, CJ.
Hello, I'm CJ.
I'm Sam. It is just CJ and I tonight. We're having a LARP special evening this evening. We've sent Jess out the room. She just couldn't make it. We've sent Jess out the room. She hasn't LARPed properly, so we didn't want these kind of like new LARP opinions being brought to the fore. We just want that out of the space.
Yeah, only old guard here, guys. only people who have done it before and make their bad choices consistently every single time. Only those.
Ow. That got both of us. That was That's
Mm-hmm. Look, if I'm nothing if not the first person to call out the old guard, and I think I might. I'm not necessarily. Depends on what you classify as the old guard in technicality, but I am a big proponent of fresh faces and fresh ideas in LARP, so I will be sure to continue to make snarky comments about things going stale for the rest of this podcast.
Absolutely, and I agree. We will. I think we're going to get into some of that later with some of the discussions that we're going to have. But I wanted to ask CJ, what have you been up to recently?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I am both, a little, it's bittersweet. I am wrapping up some of my streaming, not in a leaving midway, but in some of the shorter term games were coming to an end, and one of my longer term games, which I believe we're approaching a year, will be wrapping up shortly. That was the Spelljammer campaign. I don't know for sure that our next episode this Wednesday when we're recording this, so would have been last Wednesday by the time you hear it, I think. I do not know that will be our last episode, but it is certainly bordering. It is coming up to final episodes, so
wow.
My Wednesday nights are free. Well, shortly free, and I will be sad because I really love that character and I love that team. Everybody's great. My Tuesday nights are now free. We just wrapped up a short run on Onyx Path of Dystopia Rising Evolution, which is the sort of 4 decades after a zombie apocalypse one. Prior to that, we wrapped up a Trinity Continuum adventure module on Onyx Path, which was on my Mondays for a little while. So things are slowing down, and I'm actually really happy about it because I don't sleep, and maybe now I will sleep. But I am going to miss a lot of these characters. I still do stuff, I think, most weekends. I've got a Through the Breach campaign that's pre-recording and is going to go live soon-ish. I've got a Scion campaign that's pre-recording and going to go live soon-ish. And we're in talks of continuing the story of our Black Angels Vampire the Masquerade crew that was doing stuff for a while. So I'm not disappearing. I'm just getting into less US timed streams. So it's a bit of a long explanation, but basically good and bad at the same time, because I have to say goodbye to a lot of people, but I get to sleep through the night instead of setting my alarm for 3 a.m. Regularly. So
yeah. It's I think that would lead into a lot of discussions we're going to have later in our main topic. Stay tuned, listener, for what that is. But yeah, some of those moments can be very bittersweet. I know when the end of, and I know it was a particularly short Spelljammer campaign for Jess's Moonlighters, when that got brought to a close, we felt like we were finally running at full speed. Like the dynamic was working. We kind of understood what was happening, and we were getting a real grasp of these characters. And then it ended spectacularly. It was an amazing finish to the campaign. But I was like, oh, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah. I think, although one thing we definitely want to talk about coming up here is retiring characters, I think we can kind of branch out a little more into, as well, into campaigns, LARPs, etc., just coming to their natural close, because
Mm.
that also presents a whole host of emotions.
Yeah,
And that's where I'm at.
absolutely.
So many of mine have wrapped up in the last and are wrapping up within probably about a 2 month span. Some of them were short anyway, like short runs, but then other ones are ones that I've done for a really long time. So I'm definitely in that transitionary period right now. What about you, Sam? What have you been up to?
I have just got back from, and by I say I've just got back from, I've been back for a couple of days. Empire LRP, which is one of the UK's bigger LARP fests. I've just got back from a weekend of that, so I'm very tired. I've managed to get most of my gear stowed away and all the stuff that needs to be washed, apart from the tent. And a friend of mine is on this Friday starting a Beyond the Witchlight campaign of D&D set in our D&D, our normal
Ooh.
D&D game. He was like, "Oh, I'd love to run a campaign or like a mini module of that within the setting that we're playing in." And this is going to be one of his first kind of forays of DMing a larger group. He's done some playtesting with that campaign before, but he's really excited, and he's really good with a lot of the extra setting stuff, and I really enjoy his style. So I'm excited to be a player on that side of the table for once within that group. So that's very interesting, and you'll be
That
surprised to
is
hear that
exciting.
I bought another Lancer module
What?
because there was another
Wow.
one. I know, shock, horror. I
How
bought
many are
Legion.
there?
So this one was fan created. It
Okay.
explains AI systems, which is a big part of the rule set, but kind of like underwritten about in the main rule book to kind of allow you to just play some nuance. But someone's
Hmm.
gone, no, actually, I'm going to sit down and make up some rules and see how that is. So I think that's Catherine Stark, and I think it's called Legionnaire. I think because I just don't have it open at the moment, but it's a very big document. I can't even email it to my Kindle; it's too big. So I'm gonna have to
Oh
figure out a way
no. Oh
of
my
reading it.
goodness. So
But yeah,
someone deep did a deep dive on the AI mechanics.
they drank deep and descended, which is some phrasing from the book. So I'm really excited to get my teeth into that. But yeah, yes,
Beautiful.
we Empire's the main thing that I've been prepping for and doing, and is going to be our discussion topic.
Yeah. That's a perfect segue.
I was about to say, I was like, is there anything else? But that was absolutely seamless. And then I
Yeah,
had
no,
to
that
go
was
and
great.
say,
But then we had
this will
to
be
wonder.
seamless.
Yeah. That's okay. You could just cut this. We could just segue straight in there.
Hey, me from the future, cut this, cut this. I'm looking into the camera and there's only going to be audio files, which is great. Um, yes. So today's discussion topic is I wanted to talk about Fest LARPs and in particular Empire LARP, and I wanted to talk about retiring a character, which is something that I've just done at the event I was just at. For context, those of you who've not done LARP or Empire LARP in particular, LARPs are live action roleplay. Sometimes it's shortened to live roleplay. Some people
Mm-hmm.
find the action part a bit redundant or a bit over the top, so it gets changed. But Fest LARPs, I did try and find a definition for Fest LARP. There doesn't seem to be one online, but it tends to be like a large LARP that can usually span a large physical distance that is somewhat similar to like a music festival, but you're doing LARP. Like there's a load of tents in a field, there's usually some main stages, and the events are organizing it. And that seems to be the loose definition. But as soon as you start to define these things, there are more discrepancies between like LARPs than there are things tying them together. So the loose confederacy. So it's stuff like Empire. It's stuff like Conquest of Mithridatea, Bickeline in Canada, and I'm trying to think of a good American analogy. There's a lot of
I
like
know. My
there's a
brain is
lot of
just like,
cross
nope.
states ones which are fantastic. Uh, but I can't think of any big ones. Swordcraft in Australia.
Mm.
Um, but yes, they're particularly big in the UK because people tend to have longer weekends that they can just go do a thing and then leave. Um, So Empire is, I think, the largest numerically. I don't know whether spatially it's the biggest LARP in the UK. It certainly occupies a lot of space. This weekend just gone, they had 3,500 people on site, which does include staff, crew, volunteers, and players. But this is the biggest event that Profound Decisions, the production company, have ever done.
Yeah.
And
Also,
it
if you
shows.
think about a standard blockbuster LARP usually being on the wide ends, 100 to 300 people, you know?
Yeah.
And then you think about, okay, but then Fest LARP, you're just taking that, and if you're looking at 300 people, which can be actually pretty big for a blockbuster, but if you're looking at 300 people, okay, just times that by 10. That's no big deal.
It's the game is Empire LARP is now 10 years old. They just did a post the other day saying, "Wow, we've been doing this particular game for 10 years," and everyone was like, "Whoa!"
Wow.
And I realized that I've been doing it since 2015, so that's 8 years now. Yeah, I didn't realize how quote unquote early I'd got in. It was already really well established. But this is not even the production company's first LARP. This is like their second or third in, and they've learned a lot of lessons from the other LARPs that they've done. They did, however, move the location of where the LARP was from right next to where I was living to the middle of England, which is close to no one, apparently. Everyone has taken at least an hour and a half to get there. It's in Dartford.
Wait, is it at Eversley?
No, it's just next to Silverstone Raceway, which is just outside.
I guess that is kind of the middle of England, but you have to go either over the Dartford crossing or around London, or unless you're literally in the southeast of England, you're boned. So
yeah, a lot of people who went to a lot of the Oxford adjacent universities had a lot of LARP societies that went to Empire, and it usually took them about an hour to maybe half an hour to get there. So there were lots of groups from Oxford and around. But I met people who came from France. There's some people who come from the States. It draws a lot of attention because of its scale. So there's a lot of people. Yeah. I know that there was a Spanish group that used to come every other year, which was great. But yeah, so and the thing we really want to talk about was this is going to be, that was the last event that I was going to run for a particular character. And it may even be that it's the last time that I go to Empire for quite a while. We kind of wanted to dig into that, what it feels like. And if you're thinking of doing this with your characters, be it in LARP or be it in D&D or other role-playing systems, how's that feel? What do you do? What do you prep for? So, CJ, I know you've obviously been winding down a few TTRPGs yourself, the campaigns have come to a close. What's your initial feelings of a thing is going to end?
Depends on the thing. I mean, I feel like that's a given, but depends on the thing. Sometimes when something ends, and just to cover all my bases, this is not a call out on anything I've done recently, so if any of you guys are listening, do not worry, this is not a call out. Sometimes when a thing ends, you're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
But even if things weren't perfect, most of the time when, I'm ending a game, I definitely have a sort of it's bittersweet. I feel kind of forlorn. I've had a few times where I wasn't ready to give that character up, but then I've had other times where, I've run the gamut. I've had times where I also, I've really had every feel. Well, maybe not every feeling, but it feels like I've had almost every feeling about it, because I've had times where I've been yep, time to go, bam, or sometimes I am so glad I never have to play that character again. But then I've had plenty of times that are completely the opposite, of being not ready to let the character go, being not ready to let the story go. I think, and when I think about it, this has happened to me with LARPs and TTRPGs, although most of the time, I've felt like when it was time for a TTRP to end, it was time. Like I was ready for it. I was prepared for it, with the exception of the few that have ended suddenly with, no resolution to the story. So yeah, I mean, that's not the most helpful response to be like, I've felt all of the things, but yes. What about you? I mean, like, how are you feeling with this character, and like, do you have any parallels to how you felt previously?
Oh boy. Um, I think LARP is such an interesting thing because with TTRPGs, you're telling quite a curated story and you can curate the arcs. And so,
Mm-hmm.
as you're saying with the TTRPGs, you're like, I know this is coming to an end because either we've got a set number of games we're playing, or you have curated this arc and you know it's going to end. Unless it's like been a TPK or like an event, which in their own way can be quite interesting, cathartic.
Ooh,
Fest LARP,
sometimes.
yeah. FestLARP, because of the nature of them, they're quite iterative. They're quite continuous. There doesn't tend to be as many arcs. There doesn't tend to be kind of like as many overriding things. So the previous character that I had to this was a swashbuckling corsair who I gave a lot of physical props
Ooh.
to. I made him blind in one eye, so I had one of those faded out contact lenses. Another reason why I may have had some migraines. And then a load of rigid
Woof.
collodion scars. Yeah, a load of rigid collodion scars that just like deeply fissured my face.
I
Which
love
which was,
rigid collodion.
for those of you
It's so
home,
good.
it's basically like safe super glue, and it basically just dries out and puckers part of your skin and pulls it together in one point, so it just looks like a scar. And all you
It
need to
makes a
do is get like,
very realistic indentation, especially if it's on anywhere on your body that has a little bit of extra fat. It's harder to
Mhm.
make the realistic indentation. Like, for example, if you're doing it on the back of your hand, you're not going to have as much success. But if you're on your cheek or your lip or like your upper arm, you're going to have like a really sick looking scar.
I just had like a little red makeup pen to do a line underneath, and then I did a lot of layers. At one point, it got so fissured it basically like cracked off on its own regard. But
Yes.
in the dark, and like in some of the taverns in Empire, and some drunk people think, hey, that person's really messed up and they've just rolled it into their character. That's really cool. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm just wearing a
Yes.
contact lens. I'm okay. Yeah,
My
sorry.
my no, yeah, sidebar, but yes, my first character for College of Wizardry had a handful of facial scars, and
Nice.
I'm very proud to say that people thought they were my actual scars. So, and it was just a little bit of the right color of makeup and rigid collodion. That's it. So,
I know you always. The feeling I got was like, no, it's not actually real. But thank you so much. 'Cause it just
yep,
means
you're
like
a
that.
little proud. You're like, oh, I did a good job.
Uh, but yeah, so yeah, that character got killed off in a big battle. That's like, God, I'm trying to figure out what it's analogous to. It was a bad battle that went badly for the Empire, and a lot of people lost their characters. I think it was like over 50 people had their
Oh my
characters die on that
gosh.
event. And it's got a great name as well. It was the Battle of the Black Plateau. It was just like
Ooh.
chef's kiss, and he just got killed fighting some of his long term enemies. So in fact, he got an arc. He got an arc that got cut off a bit short, but it still worked. It was very thematic, and it worked. So I was like, oh, I was kind of happy with that. A few of my
That
other
makes sense.
friends
Yeah.
weren't ready for that arc to end, and they got very upset.
Mm.
But I was there like, I got killed by people who were going to kill me, so that makes sense. In fact, I got
Dang.
my
Yeah.
character got killed off by a guy who I went to a player event. For those of you home, a player event's kind of like a sanctioned adjacent event to the main fest LARP. So these people were like, I've got an idea to do a thing. And then they just emailed the main company, go like, are we okay to do this? We're going to do this, this, and this. And the main LARP goes, cool, have fun. Here's some resources.
Right.
So I did an event that was like, I can't remember. It was something like 12 hours of continuous fighting, which was fun. I had a
Holy
migraine after
cannoli.
that. Yeah, it was great. But it was another just bitter fight, just like repeated. And I was just stuck with these other guys who I'd never met before, but we had like,
Yeah.
you're fighting for 12 hours, you kind of grow some good
You
bonds.
get camaraderie. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the players at that event was one of the monsters who cut off my head at that battle. So he lifted up his mask. He was like, "I'm really sorry, Sam." I was like, "Michael, it's good to see you."
I can
And he said,
imagine.
"I'm really sorry, buddy." I was like, "No, you did great. This is perfect." I was like, "I can't see everybody else. Can you lift up my dead body and parade me around so I can see where everyone else is?" Like, "Yeah, sure." So he's like dragging my corpse, like ramming Imperial, just like chucking me around. This is the rule for the orcs in Empire. They're all geezers. No one explains why. No notes. So everyone's like, rah, rah, rah. It's the like
amazing
Lord of the Rings rules of orcs. They're all Cockney geezers. Let's not dig into that.
We don't know why, they just are.
We don't know why, they just are. But yeah, so that character arc was really good, fulfilling, cut off at a good point, and then I made this new character. And for a number of reasons, I just haven't been able to attend a lot of events. There's obviously the lockdowns here in England that kind of just Empire were like, obviously we can't run them, and then they were very cautious after that. They've still got pretty good COVID kind of restrictions on what you can and cannot do. Like there's no sharing of any drinking vessels there, any shared tents. Wow. Any shared tents in the players area, if someone asks you to put on a mask, the rules are you pop on a mask. Any of the shared tents that are, outside of character, you pop on a mask, even if it's just like picking up your player pack. And they're just playing it really safe. They've only just stopped asking people for the COVID
vaccination
passports. Yeah, that's the thing. But that only in this last event. But yeah, and I was also having a lot of migraines unrelated to this, and I was finding out because of this, so I haven't been able to attend. So when I came to this event, I was really tempted because I'm a bit of a research hog. I was there like, God, I should research a load of blogs and like read on how to retire a character. But I thought I'm just going to go into this organically, unadjusted, and just see where this goes.
Do what feels right.
Yes, and it was a very interesting event. Unfortunately, it got cut short because I had another migraine and I had to leave halfway through the event, so I had to go home. But yeah, it was. I had to kind of be very proactive in engineering the closing of certain things. My character had established one of the a banner, which is just an organization of characters within one of the nations, and he was, head of this, head of that. He was in charge of this to a lesser extent because I haven't been there as much. So there was a lot of me passing on things to various players, which felt really good to me. I was like, why have I not been doing this from the start? Like, why have I been hogging the game for myself? Because I'm like, oh, this is a bit of game. But actually, I felt more fun passing it on to people who were much better at it and were much more engaged than I could be than I felt playing the bits that I thought would be fun.
Right. I mean, you don't want to give necessarily, when you're still playing the character, you don't necessarily want to give everything away, but there's a certain joy in delegation as well. And seeing the joy and game it creates for others. So yeah, you're on that there. That makes sense to me.
I think you're right. Like, you've got to have something that you're going to do. Otherwise, that is the whole game. You just sitting there trying to be the most selfless person, giving away everything you do. So, but I think, and I know it can be quite a controversial opinion, but there have been players who have been playing that game for the full 10 years. And they have been doing the same things for the full 10 years. And
yeah.
And there's been, with a lot of Fest LARPs, there's a problem with inflation. The prices that were started at the beginning of the game have gone up because people are hoarding wealth to do things. And they're hogging stuff. So, why not pass it on?
I've heard a lot of talk about, for Fest LARPs and stuff, does there need to be caps for certain things? And I'm not as well versed in Fest LARPs, so I don't feel like I can speak to that, but I do feel like this particular pod at this particular moment with the two of us is definitely going to lean pro diversifying your experience, and maybe not playing the same person for 10 years, and maybe not, hoarding wealth and stuff, because I understand why people do it, and sometimes it works, so I want to caveat that. But I've certainly seen, even at blockbusters, people who play the same character over and over again, and I've seen the good and the bad of that. So, but I personally think sometimes that is an issue with letting go, which makes sense. I mean, it's hard. It really is. I know it feels like if I'm sitting here being like, oh yeah, sometimes I'm ready to let it, and then being like, but it's really hard, guys. Like, no, I'm not talking out my backside. Like, I fully understand. I do. And I have seen people who have played the same character for like 3 or 4 consecutive blockbusters and had it work really well. But the goal that they had in mind was to end an arc with them. They had an arc and they wanted to end that arc, and they achieved that, or they did their best to orchestrate that being achieved. And that translates probably, and you can definitely speak more on this, but probably translates a little better to either a Fest LARP experience, or you have other LARPs like the Witcher LARP used to be, where it was sets of 3. Like you could just attend one, but as I understand it, I haven't been to it, but as I understand it, the story was over 3 episodes, over 3 LARPs, and so you had a finite beginning and end, but you were playing things for more than one session or more than one, blockbuster weekend. So, there's definitely ways to make that work. And I think probably that translates to some of your experience in Fest LARP as well, where it's how do you tailor that arc for yourself and your character, and how do you decide when it's time to let it go?
Yeah, I definitely foresee. So I've been playing a character called Raza. He's been part of the Blood Gold Jackals, which is a small line in the brief of one of the armies for the Brass Coast, which is one of the 9 nations of the Empire. It rattles down. But yeah, so when our characters died, one of my fellow players was like, hey, I've seen this really interesting line in a brief, which is, these people just help the army. And they're called jackals because people think they steal stuff. And we're like, that's hella cool. We want to play bad guys. I've talked previously about like Event Bleed, where we played bad guys and didn't end well. It's those guys. We made ourselves super cool and good now, because we felt bad. But
I love it.
The Brass Coasters it happens a lot. The Brass Coasters had a really good history of a lot of people who were in elevated positions going, hey, if you want to be doing the thing I'm doing, which is namely a lot of the generals who are doing a lot of both military politicking and military actual fighting, going, if you want to do what I do, I don't want to do this forever, come talk to me, I will make you the me. And I know that's not been, it may not have been the case in other places. I know a lot of people have kind of sat at their positions, but especially the military ones, they're very open to getting more people in. And I think that a lot of people can foresee there's arcs within a lot of the timetable of Empire, which is most of the positions only last for a calendar year. And then they get either re-elected, or you need to be you need to rebid for these things. And so there's a lot of kind of sinks for money. So you need to bid on certain positions, or you need to fund certain things. So there's a lot of ways to draw wealth away, but with any system, there are bugs and exploits. But I've noticed there's been a slow...
Sorry, I was just going to say, it does sound like it's helpful when the mechanics aid you in having a finite arc.
Yes. Yeah, I think... But those are for kind of like what's informally known as hats, which are whenever you get into a position which is either recognized in the game, or it's a position of power, people say, oh, you're wearing a hat, or you have a hat. And some people foresee that as the plot comes to you and the plot happens, which does and doesn't happen to lesser or more degrees. I think my understanding of how RP works has really changed radically since I started playing. A lot of the time I was waiting for the plot to come to me. I was waiting for the Empire machine to crank and a story to come my way. And some of that time happened. I've fought ghosts. I fought a big giant squid on a ship. I've some stuff has like come at me, but a lot of the more fulfilling things have been the intergroup politics and relationships and kind of like the building of people, and some of the character deaths have been very fulfilling. So the kind of the generation, and I think this is and I don't think I had the tools for it, but I know since we started Dragonlance, I've seen you, I've seen James, I've seen Jess, I've seen all the other players being able to bring these things that aren't necessarily in the text of Dragonlance as RP moments, and they're very fulfilling and very moving parts. And I'm like, wow, this is what RP is. I think this is what I wanted to do earlier in my RP, like, quote unquote, career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll back that up, in that they're both important. I think for a really fulfilling RP, LARP, tabletop, whatever experience, you need both. Because I won't say it never works, but one thing that rarely works is if you have a completely 100% sandbox experience and just throw people with a bunch of LARP, not LARP, like story ideas into the sandbox and call it a day. Now, I've seen it work, and in certain genres lend more to that. I mean, if you're going for a real like soap opera genre, and you just go, make the drama, guys, and throw people in, and the people who are there are willing and able to do that, then sure, you can make something fun happen for sure. I'm not saying it never works, but rarely does. They play off each other, they complement each other, because if you have this base story and these little base events that happen, and or a big overarching story, and then you leave space in between for people to build their own stories, they will. And most of the time, again, nothing's ever 100% one way or another, but oftentimes if you build it, they will come. If you give people the space, and you, whether it's by the player base or by the establishment of the mechanics themselves, or in a great world, both, if you make it clear that sort of thing is welcome, it'll make some really fulfilling play for people. But I rarely, and I'll continue to say rarely, find that only one or only the other works.
Yes, I think what's very interesting about the way that FestLARP works is, in my experience, is that people are really ready to do these role play moments, or they've envisioned them in their head and they've prepped them going forward. And I know a lot of the first event of the year, a lot of people have got plans that they're ready to do, and it's time to time in, and everybody's doing their big emotional plot thing. So sometimes they overlap, and there's kind of like destructive interference. So like either none of the RP gets out or some of it. So it can be really hard. But also, there's a lot of physical needs that need to be done whilst you're at a FestLARP. You need to drink, you need to eat, you need to sleep at some point. Honestly, you do. People who stay up all night, they just have a very bad time. And so some of those can, like, I found, can really harsh on an experience in RP that you're having. If someone's making, if someone's trying to, like, argue why they need to have this great point, but this other person's just staring at them going, I needed to pee 5 minutes ago. I don't really need to be in this storyline. It can really... it can be really abrasive to that RP, and
yeah, causes a lot of friction.
It causes a lot of friction, and I know, like, I'm not here to blame my health, but the fact that I was having migraines meant that I couldn't be very present in moments where I'm sitting down trying to talk to my fellow Blood God Jackals, being like, this is the last time I'm going to be here. What are you going to do without me? What's it going to feel like? I wanted to really sit there and kind of either like gut wrench or like just make people feel present or ready to, like, Raz is retiring. He's not going to die. He's just going to step off, go home, and like live on the farm at home. That's fine.
Aww.
But which is lovely. And
you
that's
went
fine.
to the farm like in the real way and not like in the Your Goldfish when you were 5 way.
Yeah, in the real way. He's fine. He's very real. I'm not going to delete him off Profound Decisions website. Yeah, but it was difficult to have because my brain's trying to expand outside of my skull. I haven't
Yeah.
eaten well. Some other people who've just got from battle are dehydrated, need to change, eat. So trying to coordinate those things can
It's
sometimes
difficult.
is really difficult.
I found
And
it even happens at Blockbusters, though.
yeah,
People have so many ideas and plans. I like planning, so my happy medium, and it's different for everyone, but my happy medium has been when or what are a few times we can try to achieve this? Um, is there a specific end goal that is not like horrifically restrictive, but like, is there a specific end goal or is it however this turns out? And, those are my main points. It's not, and then you'll say this and I'll say this, and we have to do it after dinner on the first night. It's okay. What's our goal here? Okay, our goal is for these two characters to have a falling out. Is there a specific thing that needs to be said to trigger that? Okay, you're going to say that I'm a disappointment to my family. Okay, great. Okay. Can we try to do this? I know. What a great, okay, great. Love that.
that's great. I'm going to write that down. That's great.
Yeah. All right. So it is key to me, to move my character progress forward that we have this falling out as soon as possible. Can we aim for day one? It doesn't even have to be fast, or it doesn't even have to be long. Just if you see me and I'm not in a big group scene already, come up to me and tell me I'm a disappointment to my family. We'll go. We'll do it. And that's about the most planning. And that's if there's all these different contingencies that you need. Like, okay, I do need this to have this happen early, and I do need to have this one thing said. That's my example of one that has a number of checklists you still have to, but in other ways you can be like, okay, we want these two characters to have a romantic interaction sometime this weekend. Can we try to make that work? Awesome. So I try to keep the details down to the minimum possible. And sometimes the minimum possible is still 3 to 5 details, and sometimes it's 1. But I learned a lot from a Blockbuster where I successfully completed everything I promised everyone I would do. But what that entailed for me is to have an entire schedule written in my character's journal with specific times that I was supposed to meet people in specific places and things I needed to remember to say to those people. And it was a thing that I didn't mind and I enjoyed at the time. But after doing it, I thought, I don't want to do this again. I didn't not enjoy it, but I don't want this to be my LARP experience.
It's not an organic experience.
Exactly.
It can feel very curated and very pressured. And if that's not what the event is meant to be, then yeah, you're right.
And I love creating play for other people. It is one of, if not my favorite thing about LARPs. But I had gone so far that way that I was essentially an NPC, but I paid to be there. And it wasn't an NPC. Now, I've had times where I've been essentially an NPC but paid to be there and was basically an NPC because of what people have asked of me. This was not this situation. I did this to myself. Nobody told me to do this. Nobody asked me to do this. The orgs didn't ask me to do this. So I wasn't going, oh my God, I was basically an NPC for this. No, I was like, you made yourself an NPC in everyone else's stories. And like, you created so much play that was great, but everything was scripted. So, that was an experience for me that I kind of stepped back and thought, okay, there's got to be a medium between that and planning nothing. That's where I got my checklist.
Yeah. What I found particularly useful because of the nature of Empire is somewhat persistent between. So your Empire is meant to be this is the Empire, quote unquote, and all of its electorals and all its big heroes attend this summit 4 times a year, which is on the equinox and the solstices. And that's just meant to be the time that it happens. So the event we just had was quote unquote winter. A, it was cold, but B, it was also, let me check, April. So it's a little bit incongruous, but also I don't want it to be actual England winter in Silverstone, which was incredibly windy even in the middle of summer. It's a bit nasty. They're going to find a permanent site soon, I promise. But because it's semi-persistent, and because I'm not always able to get the role play I want to do in person, what's great is if people can latch onto a feeling, they can go, hey, I'm going to write you a letter. Or
yes,
I'm going to let's write a scene about this, because the wonder of Google Docs. So what I'm going to do, because I wasn't able to do this curated end to this character, is I'm going to talk to the other heads of the group who I've been role playing the longest with. I'm going to be like, I would like to rewrite the end. It won't, because it doesn't mechanically affect the LARP. There's I'm not giving any resources. They're not gaining any money, and I haven't conquered any baddies. We're just going to rewrite that ending, and that
adds
can
emotional depth. Yeah, it does. No, I've done that with characters I'm not ready to let go of, or that I don't feel I've wrapped up in a way I was happy with. Sorry, you were saying something?
So because of the nature of a lot of the stuff, like I was saying, there's a lot of physical needs, there's a lot of conflicting timelines, there's a lot of events that happen. Sometimes the moment that you want just passes you by, and you're like, and you can talk to the other players after the fact, like, I wanted to do this, and it's like, I wanted to do that too. You can create that moment in writing, it can live there, and you can edit it. You can be like, this works better. So it's not a one hit and done, and like, oh, that left me with, that wasn't quite how it was. And letter writing is such a wonderful thing, because, God, if there's one thing I've learned about LARP nerds, is that stationery is its own hobby and passion.
100%.
I've seen the most wonderfully written letters, the most wonderfully folded letters. I've had one letter that was just a single A4 piece of paper that was folded in on itself to create its own envelope, and it was concentric.
I've had a letter like that. It was so cool. My gosh. Yeah.
I had someone very excited to see my letter writing box in game. They were like, oh my God, that's amazing. They are surrounded by swords, people wearing fantastic armor, monsters, magic lights. Is that a writing box? I bought this from Hobbycraft for £7 and wood stained it, and this is what you're amazed by. Yes, it did take me a long time. Thank you for recognizing it.
I love it. Oh, I love it so much. I love letter writing. I've done it with some of my characters as well. And I also, just like, you were saying, I have role played out via writing lots of different things for characters that I wasn't willing to let go yet. And it definitely eased that, when you feel not necessarily unfulfilled, but like there's so much more that you need to do or want to do. With a character. And I found that this is and people can have different opinions, I respect them, but I found that this is a natural, I just disagree. This is a natural
I was smirking for the camera, which is why CJ went, I do.
Yes. I think this is a natural part of LARP. It's unavoidable. It won't happen every time, but there will be times where the LARP wraps up and you're like, I'm not fully fulfilled, and there are different reasons. And sometimes the reason is that the story was not executed in a way that you felt involved, or a way that you felt included. And sometimes that's the story writer's doing, or the organizer's doing. Sometimes. Oftentimes, it's just because it is difficult to achieve everything you wanted. Especially if you have a laundry list of things you want. And I've seen so many LARPers who get very, very, very upset that they weren't able to achieve everything they want. Sometimes it's understandable if maybe you had one thing you wanted to do the whole weekend and you organized it and it fell completely through. I get it. That blows. But I've also had people who let a missed connection throw off their entire LARP. And I mean, frankly, guys, you spent a lot of money and a lot of time, and you put a lot of love into these characters. So it's understandable to feel that strongly. But I personally believe also that you owe it to yourself to be flexible enough to not feel like everything has to be thrown out the window the moment something, doesn't go as planned. Because LARP is at least 80% improv. So things aren't going to go as planned. If everything you planned goes off without a hitch, it is nothing short of a miracle. That's your unicorn LARP.
Yeah.
It may never happen again.
I went in, I achieved all the things. I think that's I think that's why it's quite interesting for whenever you get new players to a particular either blockbuster or fest LARP, and they just do very kind of like, what's the word? Intuitive things. Like they go, hey, I'm at Empire. There are 9 nations here. They all seem to have a various number of player setup bars. I'm going to do a tour around the Empire. Always a killer. Always fantastic. You see all the settings. You get to see everyone's nice props. You get very drunk, and you get to go around all the nations. That's very good. There's no failure state other than if you didn't get to a nation. That's it. And then you're like, hey, I'll go to that nation the next time. There's no failure state to that. I think there's a lot of stuff that I personally found was where I tried to make a mechanically interesting character, and it had somewhat incongruous mechanics. For those of you who know the system well, I was playing a Night Mage magician because I was very interested in kind of like kind of a mercurial, non-prescriptive magic that's all about, obscuring things or unsubtle truths. And I was also playing a warrior who was an archer. These mechanically are somewhat incongruous. I wasn't able to dedicate as much time to doing the magic, and I wasn't as powerful at it. So when people did come, I'll be like, I couldn't do that. And the magic system at Empire it's not difficult, but it is complex. And the soldiery part is pretty easy to do. However, you do get quite risk averse because you've only got a set number of HP. I was playing an archer, which is a high, in real world, high cost combat. Each arrow is currently about 12 pounds.
Yeah.
So you lose.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So your loss rate is estimated at about 40% of your arrows that you got in. I've been extremely lucky, and I've only lost about up to 10% of like any arrows that I've had. But I've gone for very clearly marked arrows. I've always tried to shoot where I'm about to advance to. Loads of other nonsense. But yeah, so it's a high cost thing. So if you have a bad time, like you fire all your arrows and you can't do anything, and they all broke, or someone like picked them up and stole them, that can feel like a very bad time. So if you make a mechanically incongruous character, that can sometimes lead to you just having a bad time there, and it can feel like some of your arcs don't complete.
Definitely.
Luckily, because I was doing a lot less combat, because what happened was I was just going to get over. What usually happened was I get up very early in the morning because I get up early when it's in a tent. I'd go, it's very cold outside. I put a lot of underlayers underneath all my armor, and I didn't wear very sensible armor, so it looks great, but it's very difficult to put on. It took me about half an hour to put on leather cuirass, braces, and like legs. It's not very difficult armor, but the way I had it constructed was very difficult to put on. So, and then I'm waiting another 2 or 3 hours for everyone else to get ready. By that time, it's warm now. So now I'm running around in this ridiculous armor. The clothing isn't particularly breathable. Now I'm getting overheated because I'm doing physical exercise. And then my brain's there like, hey, it's a bit hot in here. I think it's time for a migraine. So I get very sleepy. I wasn't able to do any of the magic stuff that I wanted to do, like as my downtime. Ooh, I can do this when I'm not fighting. So I then missed out on half the game. And I would feel awful, not only physically, but like emotionally. Like I'd planned all this cool stuff and I wasn't able to do it.
Exactly.
So I think
I see that happen in blockbusters too, in different ways, especially Nordic LARPs. The term mechanically incongruous doesn't necessarily apply as is, but people who have this idea they really want to do for a character and it does not fit in with the theme. And so, similar, they've got all these cool plans and all these really cool ideas for the character, but they're just struggling to achieve any of them because it doesn't fit in with that run's theme. And, you know, and then they exhaust all their energy trying to fulfill those things and achieve those things. And sometimes there's a mechanical element too, like, oh, I made all these props for this or whatever. And it's a similar, you know, it's a similar situation where at the end of the day, you're sitting there feeling, you know, downtrodden and...
Okay, I don't know what happened there.
I didn't fully see it. I saw Sam potentially maybe jump out of the corner of my eye.
I don't know what happened. Something just like, my headphones just went boop, boop, and I was like, ah! I just flinched fully.
Well, I was at the end of my thought process anyway, but I feel like there are a lot of ways to kind of dick yourself over.
Yeah. And
when it comes to creating characters.
I've done it in TTRPGs as well, where I'm like, I've got this really interesting concept. They're this and they're this. And then I try and do it and I find out, especially with a lot of the more common systems like D&D, it doesn't do well to make a, you know, unless you are interested in having a bad time, making a like a multi-skilled character like a barbarian sorcerer could work, but you're probably going to have a bad time if you're fighting or if you're doing spell casting. It's not going to be like it's not going to be a great time all the time. Whereas people who are like, hey, I would like to fight and I'm going to be a fighter, and they find, oh, the fighting's very easy, and then they just RP for the rest of the time and they're like, yep, this is exactly what I wanted. Then
expectation.
So right,
and as like a side thing also, I'll say I've personally experienced, and I've seen people do other things really well, but with multi-classing, especially in D&D, I've personally experienced that if you're not switching over to what you plan to be your primary class after 3rd level, you're probably going to have to reconfigure your character at some point.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think part of it is expectation. To circle back to what I said, what expectation you set for yourself and what expectation you have of the game, and whether or not that kind of meshes with what's going to happen or what does happen.
I think also that's a really good point to bring into what I'm saying about retiring a character. I didn't have any particular expectations for this last event because every single one I've been to, I've crashed out early, had a migraine, gone home like by Saturday afternoon. So it's been it's somewhat of a cost of money, but I've been able to see friends that live a very long way away, and they're wonderful, and what also helps is that they're fantastic letter writers. So like I'm never like so that's
and what's
really
cool
wonderful.
is they can still write you because you did retire to a farm in the not secretly dead way. So
exactly, I'm not dead. But yeah, so my expectations for I was expecting to give a lot of myself away, either through the stuff that my character owns, the property, the money, some of the resources. I was just able to gift away, and that felt wonderful. And as you said, like setting up play for other people is such a wonderful thing to do. And I do like, and I know it's a bit tropey, but I was the old man patriarch who was just there like, and I give this to you, my power. Good luck. I'm going now.
Such a fulfilling scene. It really is. Not just from the person gifting, but like if you have that experience where someone is like, and now, you know, I bequeath this unto you, or now you must hold this banner, and you're like, now I must hold this banner. Like, it's great.
Yeah, there was a new player both to Empire and to the Blood Gold Jackals. He just thought, we've got these wonderful golden masks that are very evocative. So people always see us wherever we go, and they're like, oh, that's the Jackals, and we're like, excellent, the branding worked.
Yes,
that's what we wanted to do. So a lot of people are quite attracted to our banner for that, but this guy really got the vibe and everything, and I was like, he doesn't seem to like know a lot of people here, and I know that I'm about to leave at any moment, and I was like, here, have my battle mask. It's beat up, but it's still pretty good looking, and I have another one. So I was like, here, take this. Like, you're a new member of the Jackals. Take this. We didn't have enough of the other ones to give him, so I'm like, here, you have this. He's like, oh, thanks. And then I messaged him. I was like, keep it. And he's like, oh, that's really lovely. I was like,
Aww.
ooh, that's warm. That's fuzzy.
And then he'll be able to be like, yes, this retiring, this old, retiring person gifted it to me before he left. And it is dear to me because, it represents my time with the Jackals, or however he plays it. But you can play on that because it's an heirloom now.
Yeah.
And maybe if he leaves the Jackals, maybe he'll hand it down to someone else.
Ooh, that would be lovely. Oh, I'd like that a lot.
So, it's things like that can become, they become more than the initial action that started it. And that's something that's really cool about creating play in quote unquote small ways for others, is it snowballs.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's cool.
I think here would be a good point to summarize our thoughts about retiring characters, or just some general points about Fest LARPs in general. I really liked your idea of being very cognizant and aware of character arcs and priming people to do certain interactions, but not saying we will do this in this prescribed way. I think I really like the way you were like, let's do this keywords thing, or let's do that. I really thought that was very smart.
I really like that. Yeah, I guess to summarize my feelings is, with regard to retiring characters, for me, how fulfilled I feel when it's time to retire my characters is, did I feel like that character had a good arc? Not a good arc as in good arc, but a fulfilling arc, an interesting arc, and how I achieve that is through a management of my expectations, but also realistic goals. And those realistic goals, that is if you're having that interaction with someone, it's not planned to the T. It's not, it must happen at this moment. Rarely. I mean, once in a while you'll have a really big storyline coming together, and when we meet at this battlefield, we must say that, of course, it does happen. But generally speaking, all these little things, distilling it down to what's important about that interaction you're wanting to have, and making sure that gets done if you can. And forgiving yourself if it doesn't.
Now, that's the sauce.
That's because it's not perfect. And if you have a player who really, really needed you to do that, it's okay to take a second out of character when you see them, to be like, hey, I missed meeting up with you here. I'm really sorry. Is there a way that I can move your story forward for you from this point? Is there something I can do to not make up for that as in make it better, but as in do you still need something from my character specifically? And if you do, can I do that for you now? Or can I do it for you when we have a second, or when we meet in class, or when we meet on the battle, but not sitting there going, shit, I had to make this person's LARP, and now they're gonna be upset because it didn't have it. If they are that ruined about it, they also may need to do some expectation management. On the other side of things, sorry, go ahead.
Stuff that I found very kind of very moving about stuff is if someone's missed a plot point or a plot beat, and we knew we wanted to have that, having that person turn up later and just go, I'm so sorry I missed you, please, and just making which is just a general kind of kindness, making time and space for them in a way that feels, because it's unexpected, because it's outside the parameters what you wanted originally, can feel very wonderful. I know I've had a few things where I'm like, I really want to talk to this person, and then they run up and talk to me like, hey, I was trapped. I have time for you now. Please sit. Let's share this non-alcoholic wine.
And that's so ideal when that can happen. But on the flip side of things is also, how do I word this? Forgiving others if they've missed it as well. The same way that
Yeah.
you need to forgive yourself if you've missed a cue, you need to try to forgive others as well. Because, and on that note, not hinging your entire LARP on one interaction.
Yeah.
Because you don't know. It might have been completely out of their control, or you missing it might end up being completely out of your control. And, the real key is, to treat other people with respect and enjoy yourself. So forgive yourself, forgive other people. I don't want to say set your expectations low, but manage your expectations. It is just like we talked about a few episodes of playing a bad guy and then being like, oh, this isn't fun. It's okay to adjust your expectations mid-LARP, mid-TTRPG. I mean, if it's a TTRPG, you will probably want to have a quick discussion with your DM about it, but it is completely okay to do what you need to do to manage your expectations to have a good time and have a fulfilling time. And I guess that's really the summary of my feelings is give yourself touch points. Manage your expectations, but not in a way in which you go, unless this is just the kind of player you are, in which case, wow, all the more power to you, I wish I could. But not in a way where you go, I guess I'll just show up and see what happens. Like, if you're like, I guess I'll just show up and see what happens, then that's great. But if you're like, oh,
that's it.
I guess I'll just show up and see what happens so that I don't get disappointed, then you might need to reevaluate how you're approaching things. I've had to, mostly because I'm a horrific overplanner. But I've found that some of my most rewarding times were completely organic. So,
yes.
What about you? What are your parting thoughts?
I think everything you've said, additionally the stuff we said about letters and rewriting moments that have just missed, so long as they don't adversely affect other things, if it's just like a conversation that you wanted to have in front of the sunset, but that person was eating a pizza out of character because they just had a bad day and needed carbs, that's fine. The other big important thing to do at LARPs is it's big and clever to take care of your bodily needs. Self-care is really important. I mean that both physically, spiritually, mentally. There was some special NPCs going around Empire this time saying, hey, there are some safe spaces you can go to if you just need to like chill out, zone out, and just be like an amorphous blob and just relax. There were lots of points saying, hey, have you eaten today? How much water have you drank? Are you aware of like how your clothes are fitting? Are you feeling hot or frustrated? Just be super aware. You are a sim. All of your needs are going to have to like, you're going to have to be aware of all those bars. If you're like, God, I've been role playing and this has been amazing for like 8 hours straight. When was the last time you ate? Like, it's okay for you to just be like, hey, follow me whilst I go eat to have the discussion. We can have, there's usually like in character places you can eat. And you know what? I always find it so much more like fun to like, kind of like gesticulate with food in my hand about a character conversation. And then you get to eat in character, which is a very interesting process. Yeah, your physical needs are utmost and will always trump any RP moment. If you're having a bad physical time, but you said you'd do a thing, go sort yourself out and relax, because you're going to have a bad time doing the RP whilst you're thinking about your physical needs.
And really, if you're one of those people that has trouble thinking about your own needs, you're not going to be able to perform as well for others either. You know, if you're like, oh, but I have to do this for someone. Yeah, but you're not going to do as good of a job if you're dying of dehydration, are you? So just go take care of yourself, my friend. Like,
as an addendum to that exact point, I've seen a lot of people who have gotten other characters who are their friends who are like assistants or something, or like attendants, to be there like, you have a thing, like just basically in character nudge them like, you need to do something else because I can see that you're flagging in some regard. And it's okay for you to be, for other people to be aware of you as a person rather than as the shining golden god that you've presented in the field, regardless of how impressive your costume is.
For sure. And not to cut in again on your overarching thoughts, but a little aside, just because it feels obvious, but sometimes you need to have the obvious thing said to you. Just because 3 LARPs ago or last LARP, you went 10 hours without eating and it was actually totally fine, which don't. But just because that happened once doesn't necessarily mean that you can do it every single time and you'll feel fine every single time. That was probably, if not a one-off, a rare occurrence, my friend. Eat and drink.
Yeah. I've been playing Empire for 8 years. My body has changed. Things, the way that my energy is distributed and how I can do stuff has changed over that time. I've gone from being a young man to a different man, and that's fine. And that's perfectly normal. I'm very happy. But I did have some moments of dissonance from what I used to be able to do to what I can now do and what I prefer. And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to lean into that a little bit, Sam, because taking care of your physical needs is an excellent point, and I want to give it its, full spotlight, because wow, yeah, it's important.
Perfect. I think that's a wonderful point for us. CJ, did you have anything else that you were like, a frisson of thought?
No, but while we're talking about it, dear podcast listeners, when's the last time you had a glass of water?
Go drink water. Go outside, touch grass. You'll be fine.
I hate that touch grass has become like an insult now. Go touch grass.
The one that always gets me is they're like, "Have you been outside for a walk?" And I'm like, "Look, I'm a high adaptive human being. I know what I'm doing." And then I go outside for a walk, and I'm like, oh, "I'm so much better now."
Yeah. Oh, I feel called out. I'm like, I don't need a walk. I'm an introvert.
It's that one. So I'm like, look at my wonderful little cubbyhole that I've created for myself. Ooh, the outside. Ooh, it's wet. And then I go outside. I'm like, ooh, it's lovely out here. Nature and the birds.
Comfortable here. And if I go out there, I have to put on a jacket. And then I go out and I'm at least slightly better. So, yeah. When's the last time you went outside, listeners? And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sam to wrap us up.
Thank you very much for listening to our thoughts on Fest LARPs and retiring characters and more kind of like doing LARP in an abstract person way. I always love listening to what CJ has to say. CJ's got such a wonderful experience of such varying LARPs. Hopefully I'm able to do more interesting and varied LARPs myself. But I always love talking to you about what happens and how you curate. I love hearing what is in your mind about how you've gone through this experience. Because it can be quite. You can do it in a very organic way, but I really like listening to what you think and applying that to my experience and seeing if that can enhance how I feel and how I operate. So thank you for taking the time with me, CJ. Thank you very much for listening to our show, CJ. Where can we find more of your work?
Well, that's a great question, especially seeing as many of my things are wrapping up. As I think I said last episode, there is a new channel in the works that I am assisting with, but we haven't quite fully launched. Probably the first thing you're going to see from them/us is that we are actually doing a partner stream with the Onyx Path, so we'll be on the Onyx Path, but I believe it is the end of next month is when that will start. Next month being May 2023. So I'll give you the dates and specifics as we get a little closer to that time, but that is going to be a lot of fun. That is Scion. And then for another couple of weeks, you will also be able to find me on Ink and Lyre, Lyre, playing Spelljammer. Finally, you can find me under CJ Starry pretty much everywhere. And if you want to see some examples of some of my work, I have finally updated my portfolio, mostly. So you can go to cjstarry-portfolio.weebly.com. And that's that. What about you?
Huzzah! I am in I'm on your podcast feed right now, so you're listening to most of the stuff that I'm doing right now. But I'm also Project Headphones on most of the social media. I'm still on Twitter, even though it is really dying. But I haven't quite figured out Mastodon yet, but I'm probably getting there. But yeah, so Project Headphones, and sometimes it's PRJCT headphones, because there are other Project Headphones on various social media. So I've just removed some vowels, which is so edgy and cool of me. But yes, so that's where we are at the moment. Wonderful. I can also be found at sam@projectheadphones.com. Excellent.
Yay. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Sam.
Thank you, CJ. Daddy!
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard that.
Ooh, do we want to record that ending again real quick? Or
no, that's
how do we feel? Okay, great. Yeah. Cool. Well, in that case...
Thank you for listening to our show. At the Table has been a Project Headphones production. You can see more of our work over at projectheadphones.com. To get in contact with the show, please email atthetable@projectheadphones.com. Please remember to rate, review, and share amongst your friends. It's the best way we can get the show out there and do bigger and better things. I just wanted to highlight, because I didn't actually get around to talking about it in the mainstay of the podcast, I did have a good event, regardless of the fact that I did go home with a migraine. I managed to have a fun final battle. I managed to catch up with a lot of friends who I haven't seen for a very long time. The Blood Gold Jackals are going strength to strength, and I was able to hand over a lot of tasks. And what was really lovely is that people, still came up to me and asked how I was doing and included me in some stuff. And whilst I am going to talk to the two other leaders of the group and rewrite the exit, which I would have liked to do, I had a really lovely time. And it was great. I think that was the perfect kind of exit note for that character. But yeah, I just wanted, for those of you wanting, how did it go? That's how it went. So yes. And finally, our attributions. Our music was Captain Scurvy and Space Jazz by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. Licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 4 license at creativecommons.org. Licenses /by/4. Thank you and roll well.